Well, welcome everybody, and thank you all for taking the time out of your diary to join us today. My name is Mark Hudson, and I'll be one of your hosts today, along with Donald McCormick. At the moment, all attendees are in listen-only mode. We're recording this live event, and it will be available for you later today. We'll have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, and I also encourage you to use the Q&A and chat panels in the Zoom panel during the session, so I'll be able to collect questions for Donald later, or even respond to them directly within the chat. Okay, so let's get started with a quick history lesson. VisiCalc was the first spreadsheet computer program for personal computers, originally released by Apple for the Apple II by VisiCore, and considered to be the Apple II's killer app, selling over 700,000 copies. It went on to spawn an industry as other vendors entered the market. Lotus 123, SuperCalc, Quattro Pro, and of course, Microsoft Excel. Launched in 1985, Excel has grown its user base over the last 35 years to a whopping 750 million users, and has been proclaimed by the Microsoft CEO to be the most important consumer product. Spreadsheets have become a standard requirement within business, and they're now taught to our children at an early age. Spreadsheet formulas have become a second language to business users, with many adept at VLOOKUP, SUMIF, count, average, and so on. And with the 750 million users that Excel has, could this possibly make spreadsheet formulas the most widely used computer language on the planet? Now, I use the term computer language because the business user, who understands the business process and the logic, are using the spreadsheet formulas to tell Excel what to compute, much the same way as a developer would do with their code. So what if you could leverage your Excel skills to build interactive content and business applications? Well, enter Squirrel. By harnessing the power of spreadsheet formulas and logic, Squirrel allows business users to easily deliver interactive content and applications without any coding required, and is at the heart of a no-code revolution. So let's see how you do this with Squirrel. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce you to Donald McCormick, the Chief Strategy Officer at Squirrel 365. Donald, over to you.
Mark, thank you very much, and welcome everyone. So as Mark said, what we're going to do today is to introduce Squirrel, and my job is to show you what it can do and to follow up on what Mark was saying about how easy it is to use your Excel skills to create those things that Squirrel is so good at producing. So what can Squirrel do? Well, there's almost no end. I mean, if you think of some interactive web-based content that you might find on the web or want to put in a presentation, and you can have logic and data in a spreadsheet that allows you to base that on to base that on, then you can do almost anything from ROI calculators, as I say, interactive presentations, dashboards, pricing calculators, product configurators, interactive reports, lobby screens. So those screens you see changing in a reception area of a company, or perhaps in a coffee room, alerting people to different things. The possibilities really are endless. And there's a great quote from Rob Scott, who's down in Sydney, Australia, who's a user of Squirrel, and he said, "Squirrel can be used to develop almost anything. I've created some basic games, some what-if apps, some decision-making modeling tools. With a little creativity, you could build some amazing outputs without any coding knowledge." And that's from a blog post he posted on his LinkedIn account. You see his address down there. And I would also suggest you follow Rob, because he's got a number of great video tutorials for Squirrel and what you can do with it, and some of the tricks and tips that you might need when you want to get started in doing more sophisticated things. So Rob's LinkedIn profile for Squirrel, very, very worthwhile checking out. So how does Squirrel do this? Well, basically Squirrel takes in spreadsheets, either from Excel or from Google Sheets, takes them through the Squirrel Designer, where you add the magic on top of the Excel sheet, and to produce the sort of things you see on the side. Interactive content, calculators, business dashboards, a whole raft of things. So rather than sort of endlessly go on in PowerPoint, what I want to do is to spend the rest of the time that I have, the next 15 or 20 minutes, actually showing you this live, so you can see what it does for yourself, and then go into a demonstration of the product itself, so you can see how easy it is to create these things. So here I am in a web browser, and for end users to view Squirrel content, all they need is a web browser pointing at the content online. And here I have a list of the projects that I have, and I'm just going to walk through these. And each one is very different from the previous one, so it gives you a good feel for the range of things you can do with Squirrel. So the first one here is a BMI calculator, body mass index calculator. So what this does is calculate what your body mass index is based on your height and weight in kilograms and meters. So as I move these around, you see what the graphic at the bottom shows whether you're okay or perhaps not okay in terms of what you're. And again, we'll look at this later. It's based on a very simple Excel spreadsheet, but all that logic for how you calculate that is coming out of an existing Excel spreadsheet. All we've done with Squirrel is to add the UI on top of it and then compile it out into this web-based content. So that's a very simple calculator, but I want to show you one of our customers created, which is much more complicated. You can see it's the same sort of thing, and this is from a customer of ours called Future Metrics, and the guys there work with the energy industry, looking at the impact that wood pellet can have on CO2 footprint for electricity generation, and what we have here is exactly the same principle as the one you saw before. So I can move around the sliders on here to my specific setup. I can say whether things come by truck or by rail, what the ship size is, change the mix of what I'm supplying to my power station, and all the time it's updating me as to what sort of what impact that is having on my CO2 footprint. All of this, again, is based on a model that the chaps at Future Metric already had. So all the logic was already running their business. All they had to do is pull that into Squirrel, put the UI on it, and they were ready to go. If we look then at another one of these, so this is a calculator for a software product, and it's exactly the same idea as the previous one, but good to show because it looks so different. So you're not tied to what the interface looks like. You can put your own brand, your own ideas into it, and here again you sort of this is for, as I say, for a software for helping a software in a sales process. You can say what are the parameters you might want to use this, and so what will the savings be for two different products here. Also gives a great detailed breakdown of how that comes about. So I say it's a calculator, but it's more of a sort of a little mini application. Again, all put together with Squirrel, based on top of logic and data inside an Excel spreadsheet. But then we can go on to sort of things. So there are sort of calculators you might want to use during a sales cycle, or to give customers extra value on your website. But then there's also you might want to take this and put it in a presentation. So it might be much simpler uses. So here's a much simpler one where I've got charts. I can select my region here, so I can go north, south, and east, with the numbers at the bottom being for the total of all regions. I can switch between charts and tables, and as you see, the little icons here, as I change between, they move to give me whether my last quarter is up or down on the previous quarter. Very simple, but can you imagine embedding that in a presentation? So in the middle of your presentation you're giving, you can come up with this show the data, not in a static table inside something like PowerPoint, but the ability to be able to do this on the fly inside the presentation. And we'll look at that towards the end of the presentation. And something like this, literally with the data in a spreadsheet, you're looking at maybe 5 to 10 minutes to pull this together. I mean, really no more than that. In fact, none of the ones that you've seen today really would take more than sort of 30 to 60 minutes to put together. And ones like this probably only take sort of 5 to 10 minutes. You really can create this compelling content quickly and easily for use, whether, as I say, whether it be on a website, in front of customers, or in a presentation that you're doing. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It doesn't have to be a big project. It can be for one-off, but it really does enhance your presentation, engage your audience, whether they are people coming to your website or people coming to your presentations. Different one here, completely different sort of use. This is showing sort of data from about planets in the solar system. Again, shows you the sort of thing you can do to be able to quickly change views, change data. Again, all very interactive. And again, this could be, if you had the data in a spreadsheet, you could probably pull this together in 5, 10, maximum 15 minutes. Perhaps you want to embed something like a stock calculator or a stock availability calculator on your website. Again, here you can put this together based on data in a spreadsheet and the logic in a spreadsheet. Again, very quick to put together, and you can just deploy this into your website so that people can use it there when they come to visit. But also you can go up to sort of a full-on sort of business intelligence style dashboard. I mean, as well as all the other things, business intelligence dashboards is one of the things that Squirrel can do. And here I have all the classic things you might want to do. I might want to switch my view from weekly to quarterly. I might want to change my time period. I want to sort of do a little what if analysis on what if I increase sales, what would that do to my KPIs, even up to and including sort of commenting on the dashboard. So maybe I want to sort of add a new comment here. Keep up the, if I could type, keep up the good work, and there we go. And that's actually this dashboard is actually wired up to write to and from a database, so that has been written to a database for future reference, and these numbers are actually being pulled out of a database when the dashboard loads up. So from the very smallest sort of 5-minute addition to a presentation right the way through to a grand dashboard like this that's bringing live data from a database, potentially a live data, different data for different users. All of that is entirely possible with Squirrel. Again, I can't emphasize it enough, all using the existing spreadsheet skills you have for pretty much everything that you see here. Drag and drop a few components, wire them up with your existing spreadsheet knowledge, and off you go. And one of my favorites is this one down here, because as Rob said in his quote, I've even written some simple games, and actually I thought, well, is he joking? But sort of then one of the team here said, no, they're not. Look, you could do something like this. And so you'll all know the game Whack-A-Mole, where you have to sort of like, you get a mallet and the fair and you have to hit the moles as they come up. Well, this is the electronic equivalent. It's Whack-A-Squirrel. And what I can do here is if I click on them, you'll see my score going up as it goes around. I have to find, it doesn't maybe come across that well on a Zoom meeting where there's latency, but sort of I can come in here. It's a tiny game, but you can imagine using this, maybe putting this on your website, and when time's up, if you get a high score, then I don't know, you get some offer from the company that's presenting it. So it's as I say, this is here as a food for thought, because there really is almost no limit to what you can do with Squirrel. So just to give you an insight into what's possible, so that you can take your own ideas and hopefully take the product and bring those to life. So these are the sort of things that you can do with Squirrel. The question is, how do you do them? How easy is it to do them? Well, the answer to that really is it's very easy. And as I've said, Mark said before me, it's all about leveraging your knowledge from a spreadsheet or your existing spreadsheets and building on that with your knowledge of how spreadsheets work. So what we're going to do is I'm going to build a little, so you probably put this maybe in a presentation, very quickly build something from scratch based on this spreadsheet sitting here in Excel. And the way this spreadsheet works, for all of you who, this will seem probably quite a simple Excel spreadsheet for you guys, but hopefully it gets across the sort of things that you would have in a normal spreadsheet and how we take advantage of them in the Squirrel world. So what I have here is I've got some data, the Q1 data for combination of region and product. Then what I've got is the region I'm focusing on in my table. And here I've got sort of a nested if statement, which just brings, when that's south, it brings the south numbers out. When that's north, it brings the north numbers out, etc. So there, I've got south in there and it's 157. If I now type north, then you'll see the numbers change to 67, 62, 32, and 72. Then what happens when these base numbers are then inflated by growth factors, and two growth factors, an overall growth factor here of 12, set at 12%, which is across the board, and then differential growth rates over or under that 12 are applied with these numbers here for the 4 product categories. So relatively simple, but it's the sort of, I hope you can see, it's the sort of thing that people would do in their spreadsheets. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this spreadsheet then to build a little Squirrel content on top of it, just to show you how that works. So if I start up Squirrel here, the first thing we need to do is to bring in that Excel file. So I'll import that, and it's new regional sales. Just check that is in fact the file that we're working with. Yes, new regional sales. So I bring that in, and there is here in Squirrel, and this is a faithful representation. So if I've got the West numbers here, if I type in, I get it right, north in there, then you see that changes there. So it's interactive in here, and I can add more things. If I need more things in the spreadsheet, I can type in here, and I can add more, and we'll be doing that as we go along. Let me just delete that for now. So how do I get that data out of the sheet here and into the user interface? Well, the first thing I have to do is add some components. The first component I'm going to add is a column chart. And that column chart is going to represent some quarterly numbers. And I want to, I'm going to turn off a couple of things here first. Sorry, the exit labels there like that. No, not sorry. There we go. And we are going to then bind it to the data inside the spreadsheet. And so what I'm going to do here is go to my data section and say I want to display some of the data. So I just say, well, which values? I click on there and say, well, I want these values here. So it's going to click them, and now I've got that data sitting in my chart. Actually, it's the wrong way around. I don't want products along there. I want quarters. So what I need to do is to switch the data layout there so that I've got the quarters there. So that's now representing this data here. Might want to go back and sort of change the title on here. So I bind that also to the spreadsheet to give me quarterly sales, maybe take off the subtitles. Lots of things, as you can see, lots of properties there that I can change this, but that gives me my initial view of the data. Now I want as well a view of the total data. So I'm going to add another chart. This time it's going to be a pie chart. And this time I'm going to, I think, turn off the labels and then have that as being annual sales from there. Again, I'll turn off the subtitle, I think. And this time I'm going to, again, bind it to data, but slightly different data. So the values are going to be this annual sales data there. And then the labels are going to come from there. So there we go. So I've got my two charts. So yeah, charting data in Excel, not the world's most interesting thing, but what happens next is what makes it really special and is the doorway into the world of Squirrel and the interactivity and the wide range of things you can do. Because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add two controls on here. I'm going to add two sliders. And this slider is going to control values in the sheet. So what I'm going to say is this value is going to control the overall growth rate, and then actually I can just copy and then paste that to give me a second one the same, but this time I'm going to bind that to what shall I do it? I'll do it to the fruit growth rate. So those two sliders. Now what's happened is those sliders are now connected as inputs to the model in the spreadsheet. So all the logic that you had in the Excel spreadsheet, and the charts are bound to the output. So when you change those sliders, it goes through the model exactly using the logic, all this growth logic that we saw here, that I saw earlier in Excel. So I come and preview this. Then what we see is if I move this here, you can see that my chart is my sales are growing. Now, because this is an overall number, nothing's happening to the proportions of the pie. But if I use this, remember it was fruit that I did this, so that one is now changing fruit, and you can see the blue line for fruit is increasing there. And so actually, one thing I want to do here, which it makes it look rather nicer, is if I come in and I go to the y-axis, I'll put a manual scale on there and do that to 1,000. So when I preview this, when it's not, see, you get the growth feeling much better when you do that, and then we can do this with those ones there. So that makes it a little nicer. So hopefully you can see how suddenly we've brought this to life by using the underlying spreadsheet logic that we have in the sheet. So all I had to do is add components and wire them up to the particular cells in here, and hey presto, I have an interactive view of that data, which I can then go and save out, put in a website, put in a presentation, do whatever I want with. I can literally put it anywhere that I think can embed web content. But one of the things we also saw on the sheet was the fact that there's this change here. So north. So if I change this cell, I change the data. And that's another thing you might want to do. And you saw that in the dashboard earlier. So how do I do that? How do I get this to change the data in the spreadsheet? Well, again, we just add a new control. So this control is going to be a drop down. And actually, we need north, south, east, and west in here. So I can just type this into the spreadsheet. like that. And I'll say the labels for this drop down are going to be north, south, east, and west. And I can say I want the default to be just the label north. So I've got one to start with. And then again, the magic happens is I'm now going to push something like these sliders push values back into here. This is going to push a value, insert a value, and it's going to insert the label that I choose on it. And I'm going to insert it into this cell here. And so now if I confirm that, and now if I preview, then what we see is I can actually change what I'm looking at, north, south, east, and west. Yeah, the western values are all very high, so that doesn't make sense. But you see that sort of I've now got, I mean, and as I said before, I mean, this doesn't take long. I mean, as well as explaining it to you, this has maybe taken me 5 minutes or so. So it really is that quick and easy to do this sort of thing. And it's not just for this sort of dashboardy type thing. If I show you the, let's not save that away. If I show you there's one here that uses as a Google map. So I'll show you how that's, if I come into preview here, I've got a Google map that I can say I want to see gardens in London or in Paris, and it's changing the view in here. All of that is contained in these sort of, I don't know, 10 or 15 cells. There's some data that drives these two controllers. I've got a formula which injects these two values into a URL that goes to get Google Maps. I've got the web view, which is a component in Squirrel that will render external content from a URL. And then these two, and what they do is these two insert values into here and here when I select them. It's as simple as that. And I've got a mini application which does Google Maps. Again, I could run that on a website, in a presentation, wherever I am. Even if I open it here, don't save, even the game that we saw, which is doing things like tracking high scores and popping them around, it has maybe 20 or so cells in here that are driving it. And there's no formula in any of these that's more complicated than max, add one, reduce one. I mean, it's very simple stuff, but it really does sort of lend itself to being the underpinning for really whatever you want to do. If you can imagine some content that you want to do, then you can probably create it in Squirrel using this in a sort of, as Mark said, using the language of the spreadsheet functions, but no coding as anyone would recognize it, which does open this up to a whole new audience. So one last thing I want to show you, everything you've seen today is available in Squirrel today. There's one thing which is coming soon, which I want to show you because it just makes such a difference. And that is I talked a lot during the presentation about presentations, so embedding this in presentations. And so we haven't launched it yet, but what we're going to launch in the next sort of month or two is the ability to add these the Squirrel content, the output of Squirrel, into PowerPoint. So what I do is I've got an add-in here which allows me to have the Squirrel viewer in here. And so I just type the name hosted in the cloud of my project, and hey presto, it appears inside PowerPoint. And so I can and is interactive, so I can do all the things that I was doing. You saw me do before inside PowerPoint. And this is PowerPoint in design mode. If I go to presentation mode, same thing happens. I can do that here, and it will work in PowerPoint on the desktop as this is. It'll work in PowerPoint on the iPad, in the cloud. So it's a remarkable way of delivering this. And as I say, you can have a 5-minute Squirrel project that really adds enormous value to your presentation and really grabs people's attention. I mean, we all know presentations can be less than totally engaging. Well, this is a way to add that engagement to them so that you can start to get people sort of excited about what it is that you're talking about, with a little interactivity. And also it allows you to maybe have extra data on hand that you can click and answer drill down questions live in front of the audience. So I say it's not available today, but But if you use Squirrel, you download the trial, get some content. By the time you're got your content ready, I suspect that sort of will be ready with the with the PowerPoint viewer. And this one just shows you this dashboard we saw before. The reason I like showing this is because actually what's happening is every time I click on this, that's actually going back to a database to refresh live data. And if I show the comments here, if I type comments here, that's going back to a database and saving it back. So here I've got a Squirrel project, which is sitting inside PowerPoint, reading and writing from a database. It just starts to think about the power of this and where it could go. It really is a remarkable piece of technology, which but the key thing about it is it opens it up on the basis of the spreadsheet knowledge that, as Mark was saying, about 250 million people around the world already have. There's really very little else to learn other than that to be able to go on this journey and create those sort of things for yourself. So with that, I will stop and I will hand over to Mark to take any of the questions that have come in and explain to you where you can go next to get your hands on the software.
Thanks, Donald. Excellent presentation. Some really great examples there, and as always, a brilliant demonstration. We have got a number of questions that have come through on the panel. So Alan has asked, how do you handle data security? For example, person A cannot see what person B can see, etc.
So there are a number of ways that we can do that. You can when you embed a piece of Squirrel content into another environment. So say you put it on your website, or you put it in a portal, or you put it on an intranet site, then what you can do is typically the user will have logged into that environment. Well, you can set up your site, your web page, such that it passes that user's username, their credentials, into the Squirrel project. That then allows the Squirrel logic to act on that. And you can either do it if you've just got data in the spreadsheet, then you can narrow it down just on you can use the filtering capabilities of Excel and some of the Squirrel components to be able to make sure that they only see what they need or are allowed to see. Or alternatively, if, as you saw in that last dashboard, you're going against a relational database, then you can take that username, pass it through in the query that you're querying the database with, and essentially add it as an extra where clause on the query, maybe join it together with user privileges tables to get exactly back the data that you want. So a number of ways of doing that to make sure it's important to have one dashboard. You don't have to bake 100 dashboards or 100 users. You have one dashboard that fills the dashboard with the right data for the right people. You can even turn functionality on and off depending on the user. Like you might, and you could there's no limit. You could have people with preferences who say, I like a chart to start up rather than a table, and that can be stored by user. And you could, all of that is entirely possible.
Okay, thank you for that. And probably similar question, but from Peter. For more complex calculators, is it possible to save the user settings that have been used, or does this need to be linked to a database to do that?
So today you would need to link that to a database. You could write that out quite easily to a database if you were connected up that way. In the medium term, we have plans both for the ability to write back to other things than a database that are slightly easier to configure for people who actually don't have a database to hand. And also, it's something we would, over time, like to put in the product itself. So when you host it on our cloud, it would be possible to do that. But that would be further out. But today, you would need a database to write it back to, but potentially other things happening in the medium to long term for Squirrel.
Okay, thank you. A couple more before we wrap up. Ziv has asked, what are the export options and any plans to integrate with G Suite?
So export options, there are two sorts of exporting. One is to export the project itself, and today that project is exported to a set of web files that you can put on your web server. We are going to enhance that as part of the Cloud Come PowerPoint release in the near future, so you can export it up to our cloud, so you don't actually have to have a web server yourself. And then there's export from the dashboards of export cable, you can export an Excel file out of the spreadsheet, out of the Squirrel model when it's running. I don't know which one of those it would be, Google, but yes, we are looking at integrations with G Suite. One of the places that would be is, as I say, I demonstrated PowerPoint. We are also looking at being able to integrate content into Google Slides, and also to take data directly from data that's sitting in maybe a sort of Google Sheets files sitting in G Suite. So yes, there's definitely when I say plans, they're definitely on our list of things we want to look at. They're not scheduled yet, but it's something we hope to get to before too long.
Okay, thank you. Last question. You did actually answer one of Zib's other questions there as well, so thank you for that. Shrihari has asked, any limitations for the Excel data, like the number of rows and columns?
Inevitably, yes. I mean, sort of, if you try and take a sort of a million row Excel sheet and bring it in, it's going to be slow, because you've got to remember that Excel running on the desktop is a sort of a desktop app, whereas we're creating a web app here. So yes, there are limits, but you wouldn't want to do it that way, because what you can do is you can use there's no limit really to the logic you can have in there, because spreadsheets typically don't have bazillions of cells of logic. They have lots and lots of data cells. So you can actually separate the logic from the data. And what you do then is you can have something like we've got a CSV connector. I didn't talk about that today, but data can be loaded from a CSV file, either on the network or on a web server. And so if you separate the logic of like how it's turning things on and off and how visualizations are happening and how formulas are calculated from that larger set of data, then you can actually filter that data as it comes in, and as you can actually have an almost unlimited amount of data you have access to, but it's not all in the spreadsheet all at once. So there are ways around that if you do have large data volumes, and by all means, I would be happy to talk to anyone who wanted to understand how to do that in more detail.
Well, thank you, Donald, and thank you everybody for attending today. As I said at the start, this live event has been recorded, and the recording will be available to you and sent out via Zoom very shortly. For those that we didn't get to their questions, I will make sure that all those questions are answered directly to you all over the next 24 hours, so everyone will have answers to their questions. Thank you all once again, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.